Welcome back to Be Manic, Season 2, Institutional Lies and Really Bad Guys. So tonight we're talking about the funeral of the person I thought I'd become. So this is where our midnight thoughts go to be heard out loud, and we're going to go ahead and divulge right into this. So there are funerals no one ever attends. No black clothes, no hushed voices, no holded hands and folded hands. Just you standing alone in the quiet wreckage of a life you once imagined, realizing something you loved has died without ever having actually lived. I'm going through a really bad time in my life. Honestly, the worst time of my life ever. These are those events where there's no flowers, no obituary, no casket, no condolences, just the quiet realization one Saturday night or Tuesday afternoon that the person you thought you were going to become is not, in fact, going to becoming. See, no one teaches you how to grieve someone that never got a chance to even exist, especially when it's something that you harness within yourself. And nobody ever prepares you for this. Nobody warns you that grief can exist without having a body to hold as shelter, or that you can mourn a version of yourself the same way you mourn a person you've lost, slowly, quietly, and in waves that don't even ask for permission. They just flow. See, when you're 5 years old, the future feels enormous, and every adult asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like life is simply a menu, and all you have to do is point. I wonder how many of us are actually what we want it to be, and how many of us had realistic expectations. But realistic isn't something you think of at 5. There are no barriers or limitations until there are. You don't know about rent, betrayal, infidelity, grief, addiction, paperwork, custody, all of this stuff. The feeling of checking your bank account before you buy something, or, you just know you're going to be something. You know that someday you're going to have everything to offer and everyone will want to know you. At this age, you have that beauty within you of why not me? We all felt like that. Why not me? Who wouldn't want to know me? And it's just so disappointing at how you get older. And it's like it goes from why not me to I don't want it to be me. I'm going through a horrible situation that I don't deserve in any way, shape, or form. And it's so disheartening. Like, it is. I've found that when it comes to me, especially as a parent, I am the only good option for my kids. I hate how anyone else deals with them. And co-parenting is my least favorite thing in the world. My kids' dads are terrible fathers, and they're always physically harming my children. And it's one of those things where, the state allows it, and it just consumes me. I just play it over and over in my head, and I hate it. I wish I could have just had them alone. And these are things you don't think of when you're young. You think you're going to end up with the person you have kids with, but what about when you absolutely cannot? When you absolutely can't stand them? When the choices you made when you were younger become the bane of your existence as you get older. I love my kids. I hate their fathers. I really do. I don't want anything to do with them. I forget they exist until they're a part of my life, and they're always a problem. You just know when you're young you're going to be everything, and everyone's going to have something to benefit just from proximity to you. You never think that there will be people that will exist simply on the premise of wanting to destroy you and break you down in any way they can, and they'll hurt anyone they can to do that to you, and it's sick. I wanted to be a singer. Maybe you want to be an astronaut. Maybe you want to be someone who had a household name. You believe life is just linear. It's a straight line, and you walk that. You work hard. You tow it like a diving board, and you believe if you work hard, you'll win. You work hard, you become successful. Effort gets reward. You think that. You think you'll fall in love, you'll have a family, you'll grow old, roll the credits, and you think effort guarantees arrival. You think wanting something bad enough makes it yours because that's fair. And you think even though life's not fair, yes, it is. When you deserve it. Good karma. And then adolescence arrives. And I think adolescence is the first funeral. It's the time when you realize that adults don't actually know what they're doing either. They're just taller, louder, older, and they talk like they know what they're talking about, but they're just talking just like anyone else. They get angry because they're overwhelmed. Stress becomes real. They apologize late. They insult you too early, discredit you, discount you, dismiss you, and then they carry wounds they don't have names for yet. As kids, we mistake confidence for certainty. And as adults, we realize confidence is often just someone making the best estimated guess that they can with incomplete information and possibly incorrect data. Somehow that's comforting and terrifying at the same time. And because it means no one's coming to save you with perfect answers, it means everyone's just trying not to fall apart, especially not in public. It's a grand, overwhelming wave of dismay. And, I remember believing adults had all the answers. I really did trust my parents. And as an adult, there's some things they did. And I look back and I think, God, what terrible advice. Wonder why they said that. I remember thinking they had all the answers. And now that I'm an adult, and the older I get, the more I realize adulthood is not certainty. It's improvisation. It's Googling things you feel like you should already know and then aligning with what it ever, closely aligns with the data you've seen in your life. It's not knowing. It's pattern recognition. It's belief. It's hope. It's faith. It's standing on a hill and saying, I'll die up here. It's pretending you're okay while quietly recalculating literally everything. We're all pretending that we understand mortgages and taxes and APR and all this stuff and relationships and love and parenting and careers and, even our own minds, and we don't. We're all just winging it with higher stakes, and somehow we're expected to look confident while we do it, because if you do, people will align with you and follow behind with you. Then suddenly there becomes a moment, maybe in your 20s, maybe in your 30s, when you stop measuring life by birthdays and anniversaries and start measuring it by versions of yourself, different eras. And the version, of you who thought love existed is one, and the one that thought love fixed everything is right behind that. The one who believes in effort and the one that believes in guaranteed outcomes trails in another lane. Then we have the version who assumed good intentions would be enough, the version that thought their mom would last forever, and the version that thought they had something to offer everyone who met them. There's infinite possibilities when it comes to your eras. It depends on who you are and what sign you are and how often you change. I'm a Pisces, so I've had many eras, okay? Whether they're long-lived or short, I've had many. And suddenly, one by one, they began to dissipate, disappear, and disintegrate, not because they were foolish, because really, reality just asked different questions than childhood did back then. And at this stage, it's just different. You're addressing different concerns and, thinking with a different scope. Reality doesn't ever ask, what do you want to be anymore? It asks, who are you when things don't go according to plan? Who are you when no one's looking? Could you be that in front of anyone? Then why do you do it? Are you okay with who you are? Is this who you wanted to be? And, many times the answer is no at that point. They become shackles kind of anchoring you to this ground level life where you just begin to toe the line. But you used to live outside the lines, and we just don't, because there's stability and risk aversion now. And that can inhibit you from being your full self. Many people don't want to stand out, so the urge to blend in is a survival technique. There's just so many questions to it, and most of us weren't trained for the second question I asked, which is, who are you when no one's around and when things don't go your way? We were taught how to dream, how to rebuild, not how to prepare for the worst, because that wasn't an option at that time. We were gung-ho, And nostalgia, that's so strange, because people think nostalgia is wanting to go backwards, and I don't know if that's true. I think nostalgia is wanting to remember a version of yourself that hadn't yet collected so much evidence that life could actually be completely painful. This is like being burned at the stake. I swear my life is the longest crucifixion ever. I've had a life full of pain, and I'm at a point now where even thinking or attempting to be happy is completely artificial. It's just not real anymore. I just don't think I can be. I don't think I've ever been really happy. You miss believing and expecting. You miss assuming tomorrow would be better just because tomorrow existed and the sun would come up again. There was a time when you used to raise your hand to go first, and now the world does that. You miss the version that didn't flinch. The version that didn't brace for impact every time life felt good. The version of you that believed. Then something else happens. You become a parent, and suddenly you're watching another human being stand where you once stood. They're seeing the world for the first time and asking impossible questions, imagining impeccable futures, and realizing something heartbreaking. as are you. And that's that you cannot give them a pain-free life. And it makes you feel guilty when you see that they might have a life with more pain, because some kids learn differently. And that might change. You know, you can love them fiercely. You can teach them. You can protect them when you can. When you can. But eventually life will introduce itself to them too. And the realization is heavy. Not because you failed, because it means they're human, as are you. Being loved doesn't come with immunity. Because even when your best intentions shield them, they're going to become real. That cute little laugh is going to go away. That thought that you're the best is going to go away. And they're going to ask questions like, where were you? Why didn't you help me? I don't forgive you. And it's hard. You know, I think one of the hardest parts of growing older is accepting that some dreams just don't come true. Not because you weren't talented enough, or because you didn't work hard, or you didn't deserve it, or you're not as good as ABC, April, Anna, or Hannah. It's because life is complicated. You know, it's a collaboration between effort, timing, opportunity, other people's choices, and plain randomness. Honestly, I mean, you know, no complaining when it's raining. You get the hand that you have. That's what happens. You just have to learn to play with the cards you have. It's random. And you have free will, as does everyone else. Now, I've always wondered, like, people who are born like paraplegic, right? I wonder if there's a place in their life that far exceeds other people, and we do all start at the same baseline, or maybe we don't. I don't know. It's objective. You know, it's difficult to accept randomness because we like stories with formulas. We like an algorithm that we understand. You know, do this, get this, earn this, get that. Life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose something precious, everything, most of the things, you know, or maybe nothing. And, you know, sometimes someone else does everything wrong and they seem to slip through the cracks. I'm one of those people who I do my best every day and I get zero back from life. Life doesn't reimburse me ever. I never get what I put in. And this investment is becoming moot, really honestly. It's becoming redundant and insane. But I believe in things. And I'm starting to realize I shouldn't. Reality, it's not fairness. It's just reality. It's not fixed. And reality asks us to build meaning anyway. You know, even when it feels undeserved, even when it feels like you're starting over with less than you started with, like I am. Splitting hairs. You know, there's a season when disappointment becomes so familiar that you almost mistake it for your personality, and that's where I'm at. I've forgotten what hope actually feels like because I've been fighting to survive against people who say they love me. And you stop introducing yourself by your dreams. You introduce yourself by your responsibilities. You are what you do, not what you wanted. And your deadlines, obligations, recovery, resilience, that becomes your core. That becomes your pinnacle that you stand on. It's who you are now. Main foundational building blocks, okay? And they're actions. Those are verbs, not adjectives. But here we are. You know, somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, what makes me excited? What would I do if money didn't exist? And you start asking, what needs me today? Let's prioritize. Let's make a list, okay? And you find yourself withdrawn before you get your daily brief. For real. That's adulthood. Maybe. Or it's sacrifice. Maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe it's survival dressed up as maturity. Maybe it's withdrawn nature, cloaked as dedication. Maybe strength is just what we call it when we don't have another, synonym for it. But here's something I don't want us to overlook. The person you imagined at 16 wasn't wrong or impossible. They were incomplete. They couldn't imagine the losses that you would actually carry through life, and they also couldn't imagine the strengths you would develop because of said losses. And they didn't know how compassionate you would become, how observant and resilient, how much you love deeply, and how well you understand other people's pain. You're here to heal, possibly. And they aren't gifts that anyone asks for, but they're still part of what you've become. Growth rarely looks like what we actually ordered, okay? And sometimes it looks like surviving something you never thought you would have to. I get sick of this. I do. I didn't want to survive these things. I'm not impressed with myself. I'm a fraction of myself. I'm a piece of myself. That's all, a piece that's left. Because I had to experience something I never wanted to know. I never wanted to be strong. That was not on my radar at all. Not at all. I don't need it. What would I need that for? I never thought I would live a life that I had to be tough. Acceptance is often misunderstood. It's not saying I'm glad this happened. It's saying this happened. I can't rewrite yesterday, but I still get to decide how I meet tomorrow. Nice to meet you, handshake. And there's power in that, not because it eases grief or erases it, because it keeps grief from writing every chapter after, every chapter prior, and every chapter during. It reminds you that the story didn't end right there. You kept going. There's a cliffhanger, and it reminds you that you're still holding the pen. Maybe we spend too much time trying to become who we plan to be. Maybe the quieter work is learning to love the person who actually showed up. Not because they're perfect, not because their story unfolded the way they hoped, but because they're here. Learning, capable of surprising themselves and loving and being loved, becoming something different than what they lost, and becoming something they will never had planned on, and enjoying it. And that's hard. If you've been mourning the life you expected, I hope you know it's not just you. You're not a stranger alone, but you're human. And we all bury imaginary futures. We all do it. Capiche? So we all say goodbye to people we almost became. The question isn't whether that grief exists. The question is what we build after the funeral. Not tomorrow, not next year. No phoenix. We're going to rise. And so just the next honest step. That's all. Rome wasn't built in a day, but we got to find a way to get pragmatic with the fact that this is what it is. This is who we became. This is a product of our environment and of all the things we've been through. This is what stirred together, And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes enough is all there really is. And sometimes survival isn't a plot twist. It's just the quiet continuation of a story that never quite became what you hoped. Sometimes staying there isn't brave. It's just what happens when leaving isn't an option. And I don't know what kind of consolation prize that is. This is Might Be Manic, where we spiral, but we spiral cute. We're saying the midnight thoughts out loud. And until next time, this is part 2 of Institutionalized Really Bad Guys, Buyer's Remorse, and the Non-Refundable Reality. Okay? Be good to yourself. Accept yourself. Stand where you are. Breathe in, breathe out. And until next time, take care of the version of yourself that's here right now, even if they still feel like a stranger you're learning to live with.